Welcome back to Bullets and Brass. Today we're doing another fishing episode and we're talking about rods. Specifically, we're talking about some of my mistakes and things that I have learned, as well as what I'm using right now for bass. Because I grew up not fishing for bass. I grew up in an area where there were very few of them. We mostly fished for panfish, walleye, muskie. My bass experience was limited. And most of my bass experience and knowledge was not for this area. It was information from people in very different areas of the country where they have different needs. So, made a few mistakes early on, learned from them, and figured I'd share. So, real quick, we're going to run through what I use, and then we'll get into the details. And I've left the reels on the spinning rods. They're not specific. They're actually comparable reels. They get swapped as necessary. They just happen to be on these particular rods right now. So don't read anything into that. They literally have the same braid, the same leader. Yeah. So we're going to start with the casting stuff. I have a Bass Pro CarbonLite 2, and this is a medium, okay, medium power, fast action. And it's not really fast. I would call it more of a moderate fast. But it isn't a moderate. It isn't a medium action or a moderate action. However, and you'll note that all of my rods are two-piece. I drive a relatively small car and was concerned that I wouldn't be able to get them in the car. And it's true. I can fit them in if they're together, but not easily. It's a bit of a pain. So I usually leave them together, but if I've got more passengers, yeah. Anyway, this is my favorite. This is the one I throw 90% of the time. And a lot of that boils down to the guides. The guides are the best guides of any rod I throw. They are Faz-Lite, so they are the Fuji Faz-Lite guides, and they are wonderful. They are an order of magnitude better than anything else in my set for bass. Now, to be honest, if I was building a rod, I would really only care about having these on the last few. I wouldn't care about them in the back half of the rod. But hey, whatever. They are nice looking rods. They are nicely finished, nicely produced. There's nothing spectacular about them. What they are is a great price point. These are $120, and they very regularly go on sale for less than that. And I think to get a better rod, you need to spend significantly more. $150, $180, even $200. So to me, this is my favorite. Now, what do I use this for? I throw this anything from lighter Texas rigs all the way through chatterbaits. My next casting rod is what most people would think as my general purpose rod. This is a Fish Eagle, Cabela's Fish Eagle, medium heavy, fast. Now, if you ask most people for bass fishing, what is your number one, general purpose rod? They're going to say medium heavy, fast. Well, that's great for most of the country. Up here, it's a little on the heavy side. However, you can always throw a little lighter. It's not the end of the world. I like the rod. I think that these rods are underrated. I think they are very good for the money. I have been very happy with it. However, it is on the heavy side. I use it more when I'm throwing things that are a bit heavier, a bit bulkier. I really need to whip something out there. Spin baits, larger chatterbaits. If I was going to throw larger swim baits, larger for me. So like the Guggen swim baits. We're not talking saucy swimmers. We're talking the glide bait style, but the small ones. A baby Buka mini shad is going to get thrown on this instead of the CarbonLite. Now, this one is a 7-footer. The CarbonLite is 6.5. I don't care. I bought the ones that were available in 2-piece. Now I'd probably buy the single piece. I can make it fit. I can't make a 7.5 fit in my car, so I'm kind of limited to 7 feet and under. But love the rod. However, don't like the tip. The tip on this, and I will give close-ups. The tip on this is a micro guide, and I'm okay with the theory. And honestly, the tip on this one, getting there. It's kind of one of those in-between sizes. I don't know if it's a large micro or a small standard. However, this one is too small for most leader knots. They catch. They go through, but you kind of got to like jiggle reel because it's got to be at just the right angle. When you're casting, if your leader is back in, it catches and snags and does stupid stuff. It's annoying. And even an FG very often snags a little bit. It goes through, but it catches. You feel it go toonk, and the bait jerks and does something a little odd. It's very annoying. I really not a fan. And I normally run braid to leader on this rod because that way I've got 50-pound braid and I can put whatever leader I want for whatever fishing I'm doing. If I am throwing something big and heavy into the muck, into the weeds, frog, whatever, I can put heavy leader on. If I'm throwing something relatively light, I can put lighter leader on. But I got to be careful about that tip. And that is why this rod, which was the first one I got, because, hey, it's a medium heavy, it makes sense, right? Doesn't get used nearly as much as it should. So I'm gonna put this up here. Those, by the way, are $70. If you're running straight line, braid, or all braid, all mono, all fluoro, great rod. If you are somewhere where you need a regular medium heavy, medium heavy fast, general purpose, cheap rod, you're starting out, you're looking for a rod to just have an extra, those are wonderful. Just keep in mind the braid to leader tick at the end. It just drives me nuts. The guides, they're okay. They're not great. If I remember correctly, and we wrote it down here, they're aluminum oxide, no brand listed, so just some generic aluminum oxide. They don't feel bad. They don't feel great. I haven't had any issues with them, but you don't get as much feel off of them as you do the Fazlite. They are not as slick. So those are my two casting rods. Those are all I use for casting. And like I said, 90% of the time I'm using this guy. In fact, all last summer, I had a friend with me fishing, and she used the Fish Eagle with braid, and I used the CarbonLite 2 with fluoro. And I didn't have any complaints. Very often, we would do multiple days of fishing without me saying, hey, can I borrow the heavier rod for something? And we're both throwing the same baits. She would often throw very light baits. She was going for panfish a lot of time. Didn't have any problems. You don't get the greatest casting distance, but whatever. We're throwing in ponds anyway. You're usually flicking it along the shoreline as much as anything else. So remember, smaller bass. You don't need as much weight. We're not diving super deep around here. So going to the spinning rods, I came from spinning rods. I've been using spinning rods my entire life. Casting rods are relatively new for me. So spinning rods, I did a Fenwick HMX, and this was actually, I have an ultralight Fenwick Eagle, and I've got a medium light Fenwick Eagle. We'll get to that in a minute. I didn't originally have the medium. So this is a medium fast. Okay. What do we got? Yeah, medium fast with zirconium guides. Okay, zirconium oxide guides. So a little fancier than the Fish Eagle, but still a pretty basic rod. However, they call it a medium fast, but really, I'm not sure I would really call it that, because it throws, they say, okay, this is their thing, up to 3/4 ounce from 1/4 ounce. Okay, so 1/4 ounce to 3/4. that seems, I don't know. You're getting into medium heavy category there to me, which is what I use it for. This is my, hey, I would be throwing this. Oops, I'm throwing things around here. I would be throwing my casting rod, but for whatever reason I don't want to. I'm throwing a bait that just doesn't like casting rods. Something with a lot of bulk but lower weight. It's windy and I'm throwing into the wind. Like I said, I'm new to casting rods, relatively speaking, and I'm not that good yet. So if I'm throwing into the wind, I'm probably going to want a spinning rod. Or just, hey, I want to rig up two things. This I use exactly the same way I use this in terms of baits. I will throw anything from a slightly heavier Ned rig up through chatterbaits on this. So very often I'll have option 1 on here, option 2 on here, and something heavy on here. And I know you can't probably see that, but something heavy on here, option 1 on here, option 2 on here. It could be 2 different Texas rigs, could be a jig on one, a Texas rig on the other, could be a chatterbait, whatever. I treat it the same way. I use it for the same stuff. It's always a braid to a leader setup. That's just how I roll. And I really like it. It is not an expensive rod. These are about $80. Can't say enough that I've been happy with this. Nothing crazy. They are pretty rods. They do some nice trim work on the wraps. Just a little extra pride of ownership, having it look good, right? But again, if you don't want to do a casting rod and you're up here and you're looking for a general purpose bass rod, an HMX medium does the job. Okay. Now, what I use for finesse, and remember, this is bass finesse. We're not going all the way down. This isn't trout finesse. This isn't panfish. We're talking bass. This is a medium light fish eagle. I keep wanting to say fish eagle. Fenwick eagle. Now, I don't know that these still exist. They're still in production. This was something that I picked up at Cabelas. All these were actually purchased at Cabelas. It's my local big store. So I don't see these on the website now. And I haven't gone in and looked to see if they still carry them or if they're being replaced in the lineup. I still see them listed other places, but it could be old stock. It could be just, until they sell out. I don't know. Now, in this case, I got my notes because I can never remember all the details. This is a medium light, moderate fast, and pretty light. I mean, they're going down to an 1/8 to 5/8. And honestly, I've thrown as light as a 1/16 on this without any issue. So 4 to 10 pound line. So, I mean, really, you can go pretty small for bass on this. What I like about it, it is very sensitive. When they say it's a moderate fast tip, the end of that, the very end of that rod is a very fast tip. Not an extra fast, but it's the very last 6 inches really reacts. If you get anything, you get a little nibble, it knows about it real quick. But the rest of the rod, it just keeps loading. It just keeps loading. And I use it for my crankbaits, my jerk baits, really small Ned rigs, anything from an 1/8 ounce down, basically. So anything smaller for Ned baits. And I really like it. This is the one that honestly, early spring, I will probably spend the most time with, because things aren't moving fast yet. I'm still picking apart little spots with slower moving stuff, or, little Ned baits, just check a spot. Or I'm running a jerk bait down the shore. I'm checking 20 feet out, 10 feet out, 5 feet out to see how close they've come in, and I'm just running down the bank. And This lets me do that knowing that I'm not going to just rip those trebles right out of their mouth. Because even the HMX, it's got some serious power behind it, and you got to be careful. Hey, you haven't been fishing all winter? Kind of excited? Hey, I got a bite, yank, oops. This kind of reins you in a little bit. And throws even relatively heavy stuff decently, but it gets that spongy, mushy feel when you try to throw anything past like a quarter ounce. I know they say 5/8. Now, okay, it may do it and not break, but it feels like hell. Which is why I ended up buying the HMX originally. Is I was throwing stuff on here that it says it can throw, and it would do it. Your casting was real wonky. It wouldn't always go where you wanted, and it just felt very mushy. Smaller stuff, it was wonderful. Got the HMX, suddenly that middle ground worked great. But on the HMX, I'm not throwing anything with smaller trebles. Larger trebles, okay. Got to be careful on those hook sets, right? So that's kind of what I'm doing. Now, these are $70. I think I said that the HMXs were $80. Honestly, if I was doing it over, I would probably get the HMX version. But when I was buying this, I was trying to get a set, a group of rods and reels without spending a ton of money. And I had already decided that I was doing one more expensive set. So my CarbonLite, it's got a Corrado K on it. I spent the most money on it. My Fish Eagle has one of the Bass Pro reels. What is it? Pro Qualifier 2. And I like the reel, but I mean, there's nothing great about it. It's a workman-like reel. It does the job. There's nothing special. It doesn't feel great. Doesn't feel bad. I don't feel like it's gonna break. But there's no it doesn't give you joy to use. The Corrado K feels like a nice piece of hardware. It is enjoyable to use. Keep going. You can go all the way up to the fancy, right? I think the Corrado K is at that price point, just like the CarbonLite 2, where to get more, you have to spend a lot more. You almost have to double your money on from a Corrado to really feel like you've improved. Now there are other brands, you can go other brands, and they have a similar situation. You get past a certain point and diminishing returns kicks in quick. As you can see, I use several different brands for my spinning reels. I've got a Daiwa Fuego LT, cheap little Shimano Sedona, and my ultralight that I don't use for bass, but my ultralight has a little Pfluger President, which they say is a 2500 size reel. That sucker's tiny. But I probably won't buy another Fuego. I'll probably buy the next step up from the Sedona, or even a couple steps up. I do want to step up my my reels for the spinning rods. I went relatively cheap and would like to upgrade. The Fuego is not cheap. It isn't expensive, but I would like to at least get up to that level or a little higher for my spinning rod. And that is it. Let me know what you think. Does that make sense to you? Do you have any feedback for other northern fishermen? Because I understand, guys, if you're down south, the rules are different. You're fishing in different environments. You've got different size fish. You're generally throwing different baits. Up here, we have a shorter season, and like right now, bass fishing is not happening. Not necessarily even because the fish aren't around, but because it would essentially be ice fishing. Except you'd have to do it from shore because the lakes haven't completely iced over for the most part. So, yeah, not a whole lot of fun. So, I'm doing it this way. I'm aware that I could go many different directions. So tell me why. Tell me what. Tell me how. right now, this is what I'm doing. It works for me. I do want to get a medium heavy CarbonLite 2 because or something else, because I'm sick of the small guide on the Fish Eagle. What I would like to do is dedicate the Fish Eagle with some medium heavy, like 15 or 17 pound fluoro or mono, and use it as like a dedicated jig rod, because then it won't have that issue, but I can still take advantage of the rod. So anyway, take care, have fun, stay safe, y'all. Keep shooting and keep fishing. Say hi.